Hi, what's up, everybody? You know that nothing will pull me out of a months-long posting slump like my favorite time of the year. It is that time again. It's Mercury retrograde. Here we are. Okay, so what's going to happen is that coming up, Mercury retrograde is going to start on May 10th, and it's going to last until June 3rd. But why I'm doing this now is, like I've always explained about Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is going to get inside of our orbit. It's going to appear in the night sky. Usually we're looking at stuff from east to west, right? So it's going like this. This is the east to west. So it's going like this, right? Across the sky. And usually it's going like this, but because of this optical illusion, Mercury is going to seem like it backs up. So it goes from 4 degrees of Gemini, it stops at 4 degrees of Gemini and backs up to 26 degrees of Taurus, okay? So the first time that we reach that 26 degrees of Taurus point, that's when we enter what's called the shadow zone. So it's actually what we call Mercury retrograde. That's actually part 2 of the 3-part thing, right? So on Wednesday, April 27th, coming up, we are going to enter the shadow zone of Mercury retrograde. So that means Mercury is going to pass over 26 degrees of Taurus, and it's going to continue. It's going to go into Gemini, and then by May 10th, at 4 degrees of Gemini, it's going to start backing up. So I'm doing this now because it's basically whatever is thematically happening in terms of communication, intellect, thoughts, like thought patterns. Perhaps we're looking at making a decision or having to deal with the situation, or that type of thing. So the common wisdom on Mercury retrograde is don't enter contracts. You know what I mean? That communication is going to be messed up. Your car is going to break down. Stuff that has to do like your email, your computer, anything that's communication or what's that word? Transit. You know what I mean? People moving, things moving, all that stuff that has to do with Mercury. It's going to get backed up. It's going to go internal. It's going to, we're trying to talk, but we don't know how to say the right words. And people hear us different than what we intended. It's like that whole mix up and realignment. So starting out in the sign of Gemini, Mercury is actually the ruler of Gemini. So last year we had Mercury retrograde in Gemini as well. And last spring's Mercury retrograde was particularly intense. So as we go from Mercury retrograde in Gemini, backing up to Mercury retrograde in Taurus, this is going to echo, since the eclipse season last fall, we've entered now North Node into Taurus, goes backwards from Gemini into Taurus, right? So basically, if you look at my North Node videos, we're talking about North Node in Gemini is the age of misinformation. So now we're going into the age of Taurus. We're memorializing things. It's the age of bad policy because of misinformation. So like in my blog, I talked about the time we're in now, North Node in Taurus. We're going to be doing mission accomplished, like the Bush era. We're going to be, it's the first somebody to do this. It's the first somebody to do that. We're going to give... lots of memorializing, lots of saying, we did it, we did all this stuff, and that's kind of what's happening, particularly right now with COVID. Okay, we're having a lot of misinformation, and I think right now what it is instead of misinformation, what we're getting is no information. So actually, when I post this, I'm gonna put a bunch of info from the CDC, from a bunch of health reporting websites. Basically, we're headed into the next wave, and it's the BA.2 wave. It's now the dominant strain going on in America. We're now unmasking. All those numbers are starting to shoot up, and just like every model predicts, and just like the BA.2 wave that just broke out in the UK a month ago, they said America's in a month. So now we're starting to experience that. Okay, so we have this giant spike in numbers, and on every other spike, about 2 weeks later, we're getting overrun with hospitalizations, and deaths skyrocket in that time. So just like in January, where we had the most deaths in 1 month, in January we had 60,000 people die of COVID. And the CDC released information saying that 4 out of 10 of those people were vaccinated individuals. So miss me with the bullshit. You better mask up. You better keep your communities masked up. I don't want to, I am so sick of this fucking group project, you guys. Oh, it doesn't take a goddamn psychic to just listen to experts and just have a little bit of goddamn consideration. I've said the same thing over and over. I just keep saying it. So let's talk about this Mercury retrograde for a second. Kind of what's the deal? When we enter the shadow zone, what we have is Neptune conjunct Jupiter conjunct the Neptune conjunct Jupiter. No, that's not what I'm trying to talk about. So we start off in the shadow zone. North node is at 22 degrees of Taurus and Mercury retrograde is passing 26. So we start this thing on Wednesday where our fated events, the North node, what we don't know, what we're headed into this life in terms of Taurus, it's boundaries, it's possessions, it's self-esteem and value and give me my money because I'm goddamn worth it. So North node, we're trying to figure these things out, North node and Taurus. And then North node or Mercury in Taurus is right there. So we start this thing off with this thought pattern of these fated events, where this thought pattern of this time is really important. I gotta like smash it out. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta do all this stuff, okay? So then when we get to the retrograde, nothing has really moved that much. Pluto hasn't moved. Saturn hasn't moved. Mars has moved a little bit. The day after retrograde, on May 11th, Jupiter goes from Pisces into Aries. So the day after the retrograde starts, we're going to have this burst of aggression and individualism, okay? But other than that, all the outer planets kind of stay the same and everything's kind of stasis, okay? So then I'm skipping ahead. So when we get to stationing direct, still, North node is 22 degrees Taurus, Mercury is at 26 degrees of Taurus, and then when we exit, all those planets are like, have just barely moved, like the personal planets have moved. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you look at where the planets are, we're gonna think we have all this momentum. Like if you look back on my last posts from last fall, this period from January when we went out of all the retrogrades and we've just been barreling forward. I said this time from January to the end of April, it's just gonna feel really fast. We're gonna be like, bam, and we're in spring. And guess what? For me, that's true. Bam, it's spring, and I'm like, but even though we're gonna feel like we have all this momentum, we're gonna keep running into the same things. For me, this Mercury retrograde is gonna be Groundhog Day. Even though we're trying to get all this stuff going, nothing really happens. And even the moon, from when we enter the shadow zone, the moon's in Pisces. By the time the moon exits the shadow zone, the moon's in Pisces again. Like everything is back to where it was when we started. So we're gonna feel like we've taken 2 steps forward, but it's 2 steps back. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. I just feel like this whole next little bit of time, we're gonna have this huge COVID wave. We're gonna be trying to get stuff done, and everybody's gonna be like, oh, who could have predicted this? Who could have said, who would have known? Oh, I can't believe this. And it's like, if you just would have paid attention, instead of going along with this goddamn myth that came out of nowhere, that variants are less virulent, all right? Because 60,000 COVID deaths of Omicron, where 4 out of 10 people are vaccinated, almost half of the deaths of this biggest wave that we've had is people that are vaccinated, and you're sitting here trying to, like, I just can't handle it. Like, I can't fucking handle it. I can't take it. So anyways, this next month and a half from now to about June 19th, we're going to be experiencing a microcosm of about the last 2 years when it comes to misinformation, leading into bad policy, COVID wave, and just kind of major personal setbacks. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sit here and go, oh, like everything's going to be great. I actually don't think it's going to be great. I think this shit in the next couple weeks is about to fuck shit up. And again, I hope I'm wrong, but guess what? I haven't been. So astrology,